Let me please introduce to all of you our wonderful president of the IPU, the Honorable Dr. Tulia Axon. President.
Dear Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, dear Paddy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Parliamentary Forum at the High-Level Political Forum of the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This Parliamentary Forum is a flagship event of the IPU at the United Nations. Each year, we bring together parliamentarians for an assessment of progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the world's foremost agenda to combat poverty, improve lives, and make the planet sustainable. Since you are here, you all know the score already. According to the United Nations, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are in deep trouble. Despite some rays of hope, most of the global goals will not be achieved by the deadline of 2030. And almost no country is on track to achieve all the goals. The goals read like series of cold policy prescriptions and numbers. But behind those, there are real people with their suffering as well as their hopes. We don't change trajectory we are on. If we don't change the trajectory we are on, political and economic divide will grow wider. Gender inequalities will continue to leave women behind. Competition for natural resources will get fiercer. The human, environmental, and economic cost of climate change will become unsustainable. Violence and conflicts will become even more common. Food, water, and other essentials will come harder to obtain for everyone. And tragically, governments will become even more dysfunctional, unable to deliver to the people. Friends, this is not the world we want to leave behind to our children. It is not the one we want to live in. The political declaration of last year's SDGs summit, once again, reaffirmed the key oversight role of parliaments in the implementation of the goals and of the 2030 agenda. But we must ask, how effective is this oversight? Are we parliamentarians sufficiently focused on the Sustainable Development Goals? Traveling the world as President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, I am often struck by many stories of parliamentary action that in one way or another help move the needle on the SDGs. But just as often, I'm struck by the way so many parliaments are preoccupied with other concerns that have little to do with advancing the long-term vision of Sustainable Development Goals. I understand that politics can be all-consuming and that the day-to-day life of parliamentarians can be very distracting. But I also know that when there is a will, there is a way. As we said from the beginning of the Sustainable Development Goals, each country needs to have a plan to translate the global goals into realistic national objectives. Parliaments must check that all budgets and laws abide by their national plans. United Nations reports tell us that most countries do have an SDG plan of some sort, but no more than 40% of countries have integrated sustainable development goals in their national budgets, even minimally. IPU's own data show that most parliaments are not engaged in national progress reviews of the SDGs. To ensure a long-term focus on the SDGs, despite the electoral cycle, high members of parliament turnover, and shifting political alliances, parliaments need to institutionalize the SDGs through their committee systems, parliamentary budget offices, audit institutions, and other structures so that national goals become part of the political culture and part of the administrative landscape. More critically, we must start thinking of the goals not as a fixed outcome, but think of them more as a policy framework that goes well beyond 2030. The fact that there are only 6 years left for the SDGs should not discourage us. Rather, we should be motivated even more, because whatever we can do to get closer to the finish line will help us to get on the right course for the decades to come. This meeting today will focus on the goals that are under review at this high-level political forum session and are high on the IPU's agenda. SDG 16, or the so-called governance goal, and SDG 13, which deals with climate change. While all the SDGs are important and interdependent, SDG 16, which focuses on peace, justice, and strong institutions, is most critical because it enables all of other goals to succeed. Regrettably, this is one of the goals most behind. We can do more. Among other things, SDG 16 calls for more representative, inclusive, transparent, and accountable institutions, such as parliaments. You know, without strong parliaments, we can't deliver on SDGs as a whole. It is paramount, therefore, at this critical juncture, that we focus our efforts at home on retooling our parliaments for more effective representation, legislation, and oversight. Above all else, we can and must work to create a political environment that is less confrontational and more conducive for consensus building, as well as compromise, to serve the greater good of all. For my part, I am proud of the work IPU is doing with parliaments all around the world to help advance the SDGs. IPU workshops, publications, and capacity building projects, often in partnership with United Nations agencies, are making a real difference. It is also thanks to the IPU's advocacy here at the United Nations that parliamentarians are invited to join national delegations to the high-level political forum, and that a dedicated space is available to us through this meeting. Colleagues, I encourage you to take advantage of your time here to learn and to also network. Use this opportunity to boost your motivation and expand your vision. Together, we can work to deliver on the people's aspirations. We can work hard to ensure no one is left behind. I wish you all a productive session. Thank you for listening to me.